Hi, I wanted to give you just a background on the family map, family patterns, and the importance of really defining your family patterns in detail. And so the way this evolved for me was I, and in my young years, my late teens, early 20s, I was with very abusive, physically abusive men, and I knew that my aunt was with with abusive husbands over time, but my parents never argued. They, I never saw them raise their voice to each other. I never even saw them disagree. So probably I finally stopped dating men that were physically abusing me, but I stayed with men. I kept being attracted to men that were mentally abusing me and were emotionally very dominant. And I, when I started painting, I started doing stuff about Angel Island and my grandmother, but then I started trying to figure out why I was with domineering men, and my cousins, actually all my aunts and uncles except my mother, were with abusive men and women as well. And then my cousins, and they were abusers of my cousins, and then my cousins were with either very abusive people or very dominant people. So I started to look at that. I started to look at each family member and kind of their relationship to each other. And I came across this wonderful woman through corporate life, believe it or not, and her name was Sylvia LaFair. And she actually inspired this whole idea of doing a family map and mapping in the dysfunctions. And when I started doing that, and this is over the course of years and years of examining family patterns, I realized where my family patterns were coming from. And because I don't know my father's side, he was sold to the people that bought him in China way back when and brought to the United States to sell. And he was being abused by them most of his young life. He ran away when he was 15 in Oakland, California. But on my mom's side, I just didn't realize how much abuse had happened on that side. And actually sexual abuse of my mother, I found out later on. She was traded by opium by my grandfather, for opium by my grandfather for many, many, many years when she was prepubescent, which is a child actually. So learning all this helped me realize where my patterns and choices were coming from. And actually once I started defining these things, I started making better choices in men. And now my partner Chris, who some of you know, is like one of the kindest people on the planet, kindest human beings on the planet, very non-dominant, actually very functional, and he's done a lot of family work too. So it's not looking who to blame, it's looking for the patterns, and actually in finding those patterns you give forgiveness, because you realize that yes, my parent did this to me, or my parent was abusive to me, but then you find out that they're the victims of abuse and their parents were victims of abuse, and you realize that there's this long chain that you now need to break, that it's nobody's fault, really. It's comes from being colonized, being victims of war, having to migrate when you don't want to, poverty, economics, government, and just a lot of fear. I mean, everything's grounded on this fear based on all these things happening to you as a family. So that's kind of where this all came from, and that's why I believe in this work as being very important. And we've seen over time, doing this within a place of our own in various ways, shapes, and forms, that it has really transformed the way we think about ourselves as individuals, the way we think about our families, and the way we forgive and have compassion and love, most importantly for ourselves, but also for those in our immediate family and then those beyond us. And actually I learned a lot of this in the workplace with this Sylvia LaFair person, because her tenet is don't bring it to work. What happens at the dining table happens at the conference table. So whenever you're interacting with anybody, you're standing there staring at their long lineage of family behind them. So if you're dealing with anybody that's difficult in your life, just visualize when you see them, their whole family standing behind them. So there's a lot of applications for this work that we're doing. It's not just our immediate healing. It's bigger. It's for business communication. It's for any kind of organization that you might be doing, any kind of human interaction, any kind of friendship that you're developing, any kind of relationship, any kind of child rearing. This affects it all. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.